I'm Sabrina, 32. My nephew Ramon was dying in the hospital while my sister went shopping with my husband. That's how it always was with Amanda. The kid could be turning blue, and she'd be worried about missing a sale at Nordstrom while planning her next affair. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever felt completely abandoned by family. You'll definitely want to stick around for what happened next. I found myself pacing outside Ramon's room again, watching him sleep with those tubes snaking out of his little body. He was 13 and looked like he weighed maybe 90 pounds soaking wet. The pneumonia had hit him hard, and for weeks we weren't sure he'd pull through. Charlie, his stepfather, sat beside the bed reading him a book about baseball. Charlie had been more of a father to Ramon than anyone else in his life, even though he and Amanda had divorced 2 years earlier. Amanda wasn't even in the building. Again. 3 months earlier, my sister had shown up at my door looking like something out of a magazine disaster. Charlie had left her with nothing after their divorce. No money, no house, nothing. He'd made sure she understood exactly what abandoning your responsibilities meant. I thought I was being noble, opening my home to her while she got back on her feet. Looking back, that might have been my biggest mistake. "Where's his mother?" the doctor asked when I arrived that morning. "Out," I said, trying to keep the edge out of my voice. "She'll be back eventually." The doctor raised an eyebrow but didn't push it. Charlie and I had been the ones answering all the medical questions anyway. We knew Ramon's allergies, his fears, what made him laugh. Amanda knew what size clothes to buy him, maybe. Ramon had been in the hospital for 3 weeks with severe pneumonia. His lungs were so weak the doctors weren't sure he'd survive. And through it all, Amanda treated it like an inconvenient vacation. She'd stop by for an hour, take a selfie with Ramon looking sick in the background, and disappear to meet my husband David for coffee. Yeah, you heard that right. Coffee. That's what they called it. "Aunt Sabrina," Ramon whispered when he woke up. His voice was raspy from the breathing treatments. "Did Mom come today?" I smoothed his hair back. "She'll be here soon, honey." Another lie. I was getting good at those. Charlie looked at me over Ramon's head with an expression that said everything. We both knew Amanda wasn't coming. She was probably at some spa with David, planning their next secret meeting while her son fought for his life. My husband David had been surprisingly supportive through all of this. He helped with Amanda's expenses without complaining, drove me to the hospital every day, and never once suggested that maybe Amanda should take more responsibility for her own child. Looking back, his generosity should have been my first warning sign. But you know how it is when you're in the middle of chaos, you miss the obvious stuff because you're too busy putting out fires. The nurse came in to check Ramon's vitals. "His fever's breaking," she said with a smile. "That's good news." For the first time in weeks, I felt something like hope. Ramon was going to make it through this. He was going to be okay. What I didn't know was that his recovery was just the beginning of our real story. The thing about catching your sister with your husband is that movies never prepare you for how stupid you feel. Like, monumentally, earth-shatteringly stupid. I'd been bringing Amanda groceries for months while she recovered from her divorce from Charlie. Turns out she was recovering quite well in my bedroom with my husband. I came home early from the hospital that day because Ramon was finally stable enough that Charlie could stay alone with him. I was excited to shower and maybe grab a nap before heading back. The house was quiet when I walked in, which should have been my first clue. Amanda's car was in the driveway, but she wasn't in the living room watching her usual afternoon drama shows. Then I heard it, that unmistakable sound that makes your stomach drop to your toes. And here's the thing that really gets me, I actually hesitated. I stood there thinking maybe I was wrong. Maybe it wasn't what it sounded like. Because that's what good people do, right? We give everyone the benefit of the doubt, even when the doubt is paper thin. But then David laughed. That specific laugh he only did when he was really enjoying himself. The one I hadn't heard in months. I pushed open the door. Amanda was on top, her long blonde hair spilling over her shoulders like some twisted fairy tale. David's hands were tangled in it, and neither of them noticed me at first. They were too busy with each other to care about the woman who'd been supporting them both. "Well," I said, and they both froze. "This explains why you've been so understanding about the hospital bills." Amanda rolled off David without a hint of embarrassment. She pulled the sheet around herself like she was the victim here. "Sabrina, we didn't want you to find out like this." "Oh, you didn't want me to find out like this?" I walked further into the room, and honestly, I impressed myself with how calm I sounded. "How exactly did you want me to find out? Hallmark card? Skywriting?" David finally found his voice. "Sabrina, listen." "No." I held up a hand. "I don't want to hear it. I especially don't want to hear it from either of you in my bed." Amanda had the nerve to look annoyed. "Don't be dramatic. These things happen. These things happen. Like adultery was something that just fell out of the sky, completely beyond anyone's control. You're right, I said. These things do happen. And now other things are going to happen. Like both of you getting the hell out of my house. You can't just throw us out, Amanda protested. I have nowhere to go. I stared at her, this woman who'd abandoned her dying son to sleep with my husband, and felt something cold and final settle in my chest. You should have thought of that before you decided my bedroom was a good place for your midlife crisis. That's when Amanda said the words that changed everything between us forever. What did you expect, Sabrina? What can I do if I'm better than you and he wants me? David wants someone who can actually make him happy. Even David looked uncomfortable with that one. But he didn't contradict her. He just sat there pulling on his clothes while my sister explained why betraying me was actually my fault. 20 minutes later, they were both packed and gone. Amanda took her designer clothes and her attitude. David took his guilt and his excuses. And I was left standing in my empty house, wondering how the hell I'd gotten here. But here's what they didn't take. They didn't take Ramon. Because that night, when Charlie called to ask if Amanda was coming to say goodnight to her son, I had to tell him the truth. And the next morning, when the social worker asked where Ramon's mother was, I had an answer that was going to change all of our lives. The family court building smells like despair and disinfectant. I'd never been inside one before, but there I was, filing for divorce and petitioning for custody of a kid who wasn't technically mine. The lawyer I hired looked like she could bite through steel cable, which seemed appropriate for what I was about to face. Your sister is agreeing to this? Margaret Steinberg asked, adjusting her glasses as she reviewed the paperwork. She signed the papers without reading them, I said. And that was true. Amanda had been so eager to start her new life with David that she'd barely glanced at the custody documents. I don't think she really understands what she's giving up, Margaret raised an eyebrow. Or she understands perfectly and doesn't care. The truth was probably somewhere in between. Amanda had never been maternal. Even when Ramon was little, she treated him more like an accessory than a child. Charlie had done most of the actual parenting during their marriage, and now that they were divorced and she'd moved on to David, someone needed to step up. The boy wants to live with you? Margaret asked. He asked me directly. That conversation still made my chest tight. Ramon had been discharged from the hospital the week before, and when I'd explained that his mother wasn't coming back, he'd looked relieved. He said he'd rather stay with someone who actually shows up. Smart kid. Heartbreaking, but smart. The divorce proceedings with David were messier. He wanted half of everything, which was rich considering he'd been unemployed for the past year while I supported his consulting business. His lawyer argued that David deserved compensation for his contributions to our household. What contributions? I asked Margaret. Sleeping with my sister? We'll focus on financial assets, Margaret replied dryly. Adultery doesn't play as well in court as it does in conversation. Have you ever been through something that completely changed how you see people? Drop a comment below if you've ever realized someone you trusted was nothing like who you thought they were. The custody hearing was surprisingly straightforward. Amanda didn't even show up. Her lawyer read a statement saying she was unable to provide adequate care due to personal circumstances, and that she believed her son would be better served in his aunt's custody. The judge looked confused. The mother is willingly terminating her parental rights? Yes. Your Honor? Amanda's lawyer confirmed. She believes this arrangement is in the child's best interests. Ramon sat beside me in his best shirt, the one Charlie had bought him for school pictures. He was still too thin from his hospital stay, but his color was better. When the judge asked if he understood what was happening, Ramon nodded seriously. I want to stay with Aunt Sabrina, he said clearly. She's the one who takes care of me. The judge granted the custody petition that day. Just like that, I went from being an aunt to being a guardian. Ramon went from being Amanda's afterthought to being my responsibility and my privilege. David fought harder for the money than Amanda fought for her son. That should tell you everything you need to know about both of them. He wants the house, Margaret informed me after a particularly contentious session, and half your retirement savings. He can want whatever he likes, I said. What's he going to get? Margaret smiled for the first time since I'd hired her. Much less than he thinks. Turns out having documentation of adultery might not matter for custody, but it definitely matters for property division. David's lawyer had advised him to settle for less rather than drag out proceedings where more details about his affair might become public record. In the end, David got his freedom and about 30% of our assets. I got the house, most of our savings, and full custody of Ramon. More importantly, I got clarity about who I really was and what I was capable of handling. The day the divorce was finalized, Charlie took us out to dinner. He'd been fighting his own battles with Amanda over visitation rights, but he made it clear that he wanted to stay in Ramon's life if I'd allow it. He needs a father figure, Charlie said, cutting into his steak. I know I'm not his biological father, but I love that kid like he's my own. You're more his father than anyone else has ever been, I told him. Nothing about that has to change. Ramon looked up from his plate with an expression I'd never seen before. It took me a moment to recognize it as security. For maybe the first time in his life, he knew exactly where he belonged and who was going to take care of him. Raising a teenager is like defusing a bomb while riding a unicycle. Everything's fine until suddenly it's not, and you never know which wire you're going to cut that makes everything explode. With Ramon, though, most of the dangerous wires had already been cut by the time he came to live with me permanently. I don't want to talk to her, Ramon said when Amanda's lawyer called about visitation rights. We were in the kitchen making pancakes, our Sunday morning tradition that had developed naturally over the past few months. I have nothing to say to her. The kid was 15 now, taller than me, and getting that lanky teenager look where his feet seemed too big for his body. He'd been living with me for almost 2 years, and in that time, Amanda had called exactly 3 times. Christmas, his birthday, and one random Tuesday when she was probably drunk. You don't have to talk to her, I said, flipping a pancake with maybe more force than necessary. But we should probably discuss what you want to tell the lawyer. Tell him she gave up her rights. Ramon sat at the counter, reading a book about marine biology. The kid was brilliant straight A's and already talking about college. She made her choice. That was the thing about Ramon that broke my heart and made me proud at the same time. He was mature in ways kids shouldn't have to be. He understood adult consequences because he'd been living with them his whole life. Your mom might want to be part of your life again, I said carefully. People change. Ramon looked up from his book with an expression that was way too cynical for a 15-year-old. Do they, though? Because from where I'm sitting, Mom's been pretty consistent about putting herself first. Hard to argue with that logic. Charlie had remained a constant presence in Ramon's life, which had been a gift for all of us. He picked Ramon up from school when I couldn't, helped with homework, and took him to baseball games. The 3 of us had found a rhythm that worked unconventional maybe, but stable. Speaking of your mom, I said, because we needed to address the elephant in the room. Her lawyer says she wants to have dinner with you. Just the 2 of you. Ramon was quiet for a long moment, reading the same paragraph over and over. Finally, he closed the book and looked at me directly. Do you think I should? That's a question no guardian wants to answer. How do you tell a kid that his mother is selfish and unreliable without completely destroying his ability to trust people? How do you protect him from disappointment while still giving him the chance to form his own relationships? I think you should do whatever feels right to you, I said finally, and I think you're smart enough to handle whatever happens. What if she wants me to come live with her again? Do you want to live with her? No. The answer came immediately, without hesitation. I want to stay here. This is home. My heart did something complicated in my chest. Home. He called this place home. Then that's settled, I said. Whatever she wants to discuss, you already know what you want. That makes you stronger going into the conversation. Ramon met with Amanda the following week at a restaurant downtown. I dropped him off and waited in the parking lot like an overprotective soccer mom, ready to intervene if things went sideways. He was inside for about an hour. When he came out, his expression was thoughtful but calm. How did it go? I asked as he buckled his seatbelt. She wants me to move back in with her and David, he said matter-of-factly. They got married, apparently. She says they have a stable home now and can provide for me. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. What did you tell her? I told her congratulations on the marriage. Ramon looked out the window as we pulled out of the parking lot. And I told her I'm staying with you. How did she take that? She cried. His voice was neutral, like he was describing the weather. She said I was ungrateful and that she's my real mother and has rights. You know she does have legal rights, I said carefully. If she really wanted to fight for custody, she won't, Ramon interrupted. She doesn't actually want me back. She wants to look like the kind of person who would want me back. There's a difference. Sometimes this kid's insight scared me. He saw through people's motivations with surgical precision, probably because he'd had to learn early how to protect himself from disappointment. I'm proud of you, I told him. That couldn't have been easy. It wasn't hard either, he said. I just told her the truth. You're my family now. She's just someone I used to live with. That night, Ramon called Charlie to tell him about the dinner. I listened from the kitchen as he recounted the conversation with the same matter-of-fact tone he'd used with me. Yeah, she cried, Ramon was saying. But it wasn't real crying. It was the kind she does when she wants something. Even from another room, I could hear Charlie's proud laugh. You're getting too smart for your own good, kid. Aunt Sabrina says being smart is never a problem unless you use it to hurt people. Your aunt is a wise woman, Charlie replied. You're lucky to have her. I know, Ramon said simply. We're lucky to have each other. College applications are basically torture devices designed to make teenagers question every decision they've ever made. Ramon was 17 now, applying to pre-med programs with the kind of focus that would have impressed NASA scientists. I, meanwhile, was trying not to have a nervous breakdown every time an acceptance letter arrived. Johns Hopkins wants to interview me, Ramon announced, waving a letter like he'd won the lottery. And Georgetown sent this whole packet about their accelerated program. I looked up from my laptop where I'd been researching student loan options for the 15th time that week. That's amazing, honey. When's the Johns Hopkins interview? Next month. Charlie offered to drive me down. Ramon sat across from me at the kitchen table, surrounded by applications and scholarship forms. He says road trips are good for clearing your head before big interviews. Charlie had become more than just Ramon's former stepfather over the years. He was the closest thing to a real father the kid had ever had, and their relationship had only grown stronger since the divorce from Amanda. It was Charlie who taught Ramon to drive, Charlie who explained the more awkward parts of growing up, and Charlie who would probably walk him down the aisle someday if Ramon decided to get married. Have you heard anything from your mother about college? I asked casually. Amanda had been conspicuously absent during the application process, despite several attempts by Ramon to include her in the conversation. She sent a card, Ramon said without looking up from his essays. Congratulations on your achievements. Like I'd graduated already. Some things never change. Amanda was still treating major life events like afterthoughts, something to acknowledge with minimum effort and maximum distance. Does that bother you? Ramon considered the question seriously. He'd grown into a thoughtful young man, tall and lean, with Charlie's steady demeanor and a sharp intelligence that was entirely his own. Not really, he said finally. I used to think there was something wrong with me, you know? Like, maybe if I was smarter or more interesting or less trouble, she'd want to be around more. Ramon. But I figured out that wasn't it, he continued. Some people just aren't built for taking care of other people. She's one of those people. It doesn't make her evil, but it doesn't make her a mother either. The kid had a way of cutting straight to the heart of things that still amazed me. At 17, he had a clearer understanding of family dynamics than most adults I knew. You know she loves you, I said. Because even though Amanda was terrible at showing it, I believed it was true in whatever way she was capable of love. Maybe, Ramon shrugged. But love isn't just a feeling. It's what you do. And what she does is stay away unless she needs something. Hard to argue with that assessment. The college acceptances started rolling in that spring. Georgetown, Johns Hopkins, even Harvard sent acceptance letters. Ramon had worked incredibly hard, maintaining a perfect GPA while volunteering at the Children's Hospital where he'd once been a patient. His personal essay about overcoming family challenges to pursue medicine had apparently impressed admissions committees. I want to stay close, he told me one evening as we reviewed financial aid packages. Georgetown or Hopkins. Somewhere I can come home for dinner sometimes. You don't have to make decisions based on me, I said. This is your life, your future. You're part of my future, Ramon replied simply. You and Charlie, we're a family. That doesn't change just because I'm going to college. That's when Charlie called with news that would change everything again. Amanda's been trying to reach me, he said over the phone. I had him on speaker while Ramon and I made dinner. She says she wants to talk about Ramon's college expenses. Ramon looked up from the vegetables he was chopping. What does that mean? It means your mother might finally be stepping up, Charlie said carefully. Or it means she wants something. With Amanda, it's usually hard to tell the difference. Did she say what she wants to discuss? I asked. She wants to meet, all of us together. Says it's time we had a family conversation about Ramon's future. Ramon set down his knife and leaned against the counter. After 4 years of nothing, now she wants a family conversation. The timing is interesting, I agreed, right when college decisions need to be made and financial commitments need to be signed. But here's the thing about family, even when you know someone's motives are questionable, part of you still hopes they might surprise you. Part of you wants to believe that people can change, that mothers can suddenly become maternal, that families can heal their broken places. Let's meet with her, Ramon said finally. But we do it here, in our house, with all of us present. And she doesn't get to make demands or ultimatums. You sure about that? I asked. Ramon nodded firmly. I'm 18 next month, legally an adult. If she wants to be part of this conversation, she can participate as an equal, not as someone with authority over my life. Charlie chuckled over the phone. Kids got more backbone than half the adults I know. He learned from the best, I said. looking at Ramon with pride. When should we schedule this family meeting? Next week, Ramon said. Right after my Georgetown interview. I want to know where I stand with my future before I deal with my past. Smart kid, always had been. The thing about confronting your past is that it never looks quite like you remember it. Amanda showed up at our door wearing designer clothes that probably cost more than my car payment, looking like she'd stepped out of a magazine about successful women. Except her eyes gave her away. They had that slightly desperate look of someone trying too hard to convince everyone she was doing fine. David waited in the car. Apparently he wasn't invited to this particular family reunion, which was probably for the best. Charlie was already in the living room when they arrived, looking comfortable and relaxed like he belonged there. Which, honestly, he did. This was more his family now than Amanda's. Ramon, Amanda said, and her voice had that artificially bright tone people use when they're nervous. Look at you. You're so tall. Hi, Mom. Ramon's voice was polite but distant, like he was greeting a neighbor he didn't know very well. Thanks for coming. She looked around the house, our house, and I could see her cataloging the changes. The family photos that included Charlie, but not her. The medical school brochures scattered on the coffee table, the evidence of a life that had moved forward without her. This is cozy, Amanda said, settling onto the couch like she was visiting a distant relative. Very domestic. I bit back my first response, which would have been something sarcastic about how domestic environments are generally good for raising children. Instead, I offered coffee and waited for her to explain why she was here. I wanted to discuss Ramon's college plans, Amanda began once we were all seated. I know he's been accepted to several schools, and I think it's time I contributed to his education. Charlie raised an eyebrow. After 4 years? I've been getting my life together, Amanda said defensively. David and I are doing well now. We have stable income, and I want to help with my son's future. That's generous, I said carefully. What did you have in mind? Amanda reached into her purse and pulled out a folder. I've been researching colleges, and I think Ramon should consider Stanford or UCLA. Excellent medical programs, and the weather is much better than the East Coast. Ramon leaned forward slightly. Those schools are 3,000 miles away. Exactly, Amanda smiled. Time to spread your wings, sweetheart. See the world. You can't stay tied to this place forever. And there it was, the real agenda. Amanda didn't want to contribute to Ramon's education. She wanted to control it. She wanted him far away from the family he'd built here, probably so she could rewrite history about why she'd been absent for so long. I've already committed to Georgetown, Ramon said calmly. Early decision. The paperwork's already filed. Amanda's smile faltered. Well, that can be changed. These things aren't set in stone. Actually, early decision commitments are legally binding, Charlie interjected. Ramon would forfeit his deposit and potentially face academic penalties if he backed out now. Since when are you an expert on college admissions? Amanda snapped. And there was the Amanda I remembered. The one who appeared when she didn't get her way immediately. Since I helped him with the applications, Charlie replied mildly. Someone had to. The temperature in the room dropped about 10 degrees. Amanda looked from Charlie to me to Ramon, clearly realizing that this conversation wasn't going the way she'd planned. I'm his mother, she said finally. I should have been consulted about these decisions. You were invited to be part of the process, Ramon said, and his voice was still calm but had an edge now. Multiple times. You didn't respond to my emails about school visits. You didn't come to the college fair. You missed the parent night where financial aid was explained. I was busy. You were absent, Ramon corrected. There's a difference. Amanda's composure was starting to crack. I made mistakes, but I'm here now. I want to make up for lost time. How? Ramon asked simply. By sending me to California so you can tell people you're paying for your son's education? By taking credit for accomplishments you had nothing to do with? That's exactly what this is. Ramon stood up, and suddenly he looked like the adult in the room. You want the appearance of being involved without actually being involved. Just like always. Amanda's eyes filled with tears, but they felt calculated rather than genuine. How can you say that to me? I gave birth to you. I raised you. Sabrina raised me, Ramon said quietly. Charlie raised me. You housed me until someone else was willing to take responsibility. The silence that followed was deafening. Amanda looked around the room like she was seeing it clearly for the first time. The family photos, the homework schedule on the refrigerator, the college acceptance letters proudly displayed on the mantel, evidence of a life lived without her, a family formed despite her absence. Fine, Amanda said finally, standing up and straightening her designer jacket. but don't come looking for me when you need help. Don't expect me to be there when things get difficult." Ramon looked at her with something that might have been pity. I stopped expecting that a long time ago. After Amanda left, the three of us sat in the living room processing what had just happened. Charlie broke the silence first. "Kid handled that better than most adults would have. I had good teachers," Ramon said, looking at me and Charlie. "You two taught me that family isn't about biology. It's about showing up." That night, after Charlie went home and Ramon was upstairs studying, I stood in my kitchen and realized something that should have been obvious years earlier. We weren't a broken family trying to heal. We were a chosen family that had always been whole. Amanda's absence hadn't damaged us. It had revealed who we really were. Sometimes the best families are the ones you build yourself, one choice at a time. And sometimes the people who leave you end up giving you the greatest gift of all, the freedom to become who you're meant to be. 9 years passed before Amanda came back into our lives. By then, everything had changed in ways she could never have imagined. 9 years is a long time to reinvent yourself. Long enough to watch a scared 13-year-old become a confident medical school graduate. Long enough to build a consulting business from scratch. Long enough to fall in love again and get married to a man who understood that some families are made by choice, not chance. My doorbell rang on Thanksgiving morning while I was basting the turkey. Now, I don't know about you, but in my experience, unexpected visitors on major holidays usually bring drama, not casseroles. I wiped my hands on my apron and walked to the front door, expecting maybe a neighbor or a delivery driver working overtime. Instead, I found Amanda. She looked older, obviously, tired in a way that expensive makeup couldn't quite hide. Her blonde hair was still perfectly styled, but there was something desperate in her eyes that reminded me of a cornered animal. She clutched a small suitcase like it contained everything she owned, which, knowing Amanda's current situation, it probably did. "Hello, Sabrina," she said, and her voice had lost that confident edge I remembered. "I know this is unexpected." Unexpected? That's like calling a tornado a light breeze. I stood in my doorway looking at the woman who'd disappeared from our lives nearly a decade ago, and felt absolutely nothing. No anger, no sadness, just a mild curiosity about what fresh chaos she was planning to bring. "Amanda." I didn't move aside to let her in. "It's been a while. Can I come in? Please?" She glanced over my shoulder toward the warmth and noise coming from inside. I can smell dinner cooking. Of course she could. Charlie had been making Thanksgiving dinner with us for the past 8 years. He'd become part of our tradition, part of our family, in ways Amanda never had been even when she lived here. "Actually, it's Marcus making dinner now," I said pleasantly. "My husband has quite a talent for cooking." Amanda's face did something complicated. Husband? Where else would I be on Thanksgiving? I stepped back slightly but didn't quite invite her in. This is where family gathers. That word hit her like a slap. Family. The thing she'd walked away from without a second thought, now claimed by people who'd actually earned it. "Sabrina, who's at the door?" called a voice from the kitchen. My husband Marcus appeared behind me, dish towel in hand, looking curiously at our unexpected guest. "Marcus, this is Amanda. My sister." I emphasized the word sister like I was identifying a species of insect. "Amanda, this is my husband Marcus." Marcus extended his hand politely. He'd heard stories about Amanda, of course, but this was their first meeting. "Nice to finally meet you. Sabrina's told me so much about you." Amanda shook his hand, but her eyes were calculating, trying to figure out how this new person fit into the family dynamic she thought she understood. "Is Ramon here?" she asked, and there it was. The real reason for her visit. "He's in the living room," I said carefully. "But Amanda, you should know. Aunt Sabrina," Ramon's voice stopped mid-sentence as he appeared in the hallway. My nephew, my son, really, in every way that mattered, had grown into an impressive young man. 22 now, recently graduated from Georgetown Medical School, starting his residency at Johns Hopkins in the spring. Tall, confident, with the kind of quiet intelligence that made people trust him immediately. Amanda stared at him like she'd seen a ghost. "Ramon? Hello, Mother." His voice was polite but distant, the tone you'd use with a stranger at a business meeting. I watched Amanda process the man standing before her. This wasn't the scared, sick 13-year-old she'd abandoned. This was Dr. Ramon Valdez, successful and self-assured, clearly loved and well cared for by the family that had actually raised him. "You're so different," Amanda said weakly. 9 years will do that," Ramon replied calmly. "What brings you here? What do you think will happen next? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I have a feeling you're going to want to see how this family reunion plays out." The direct question seemed to catch Amanda off guard. She'd probably expected tears, accusations, or maybe even a warm embrace. Instead, she got the measured response of a young man who'd learned to protect himself from disappointment. "I wanted to see you," she said. "To explain what?" Ramon asked. "Where you've been, why you left, why you never called." That's when Charlie's voice came from the kitchen. "Hey, Ramon, can you help me with the—" He stopped as he entered the hallway and saw Amanda. His expression didn't change much, but I caught the slight tightening around his eyes. "Amanda," Charlie said neutrally, "this is a surprise." The shock on Amanda's face was immediate and complete. Whatever she'd expected to find here, seeing Charlie, her ex-husband, the man who'd left her with nothing standing in my kitchen like he belonged here, was clearly not it. Family drama in the living room is like watching a car accident in slow motion. You know it's going to be messy, but you can't look away. Amanda perched on the edge of our couch like she was ready to run, while the rest of us settled into the comfortable furniture of people who actually belonged there. The silence stretched until Marcus, ever the diplomat, cleared his throat. "So, Amanda, what have you been up to these past few years?" I had to give my husband credit. He was trying to make this less awkward, though I personally thought some situations deserved all the awkwardness they could get. Amanda's eyes kept darting between Charlie and me like she was trying to solve a puzzle that didn't make sense. "David and I got married," she said finally. "We moved to Florida. He was doing real estate development." "Was?" Charlie caught the past tense immediately. Amanda's perfectly manicured hands twisted in her lap. "The market crashed. Bad investments. We lost everything." She looked up at Ramon, and I saw something I'd never seen in Amanda before: genuine shame. "He left me 6 months ago for his business partner's daughter, 23 years old." Well, karma really does have a sense of humor, doesn't it? The man who'd helped her abandon her family had abandoned her for a younger model. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. "I'm sorry to hear that," Ramon said, and I could tell he meant it. The kid had grown up with more compassion than his mother had ever shown him. That must have been difficult. "I have nothing," Amanda continued, her voice getting smaller. "No money, no house, nowhere to go. My friends in Florida, they were really David's friends. When he left, they stopped returning my calls." Charlie shifted uncomfortably in his chair. He was probably remembering his own divorce from Amanda, how he'd left her with nothing after catching her cheating with multiple men during their marriage. The irony wasn't lost on any of us. "What about your friends here?" Marcus asked. "Family?" Amanda's laugh was bitter. "What friends? What family? I burned those bridges a long time ago." She looked directly at me. "I know I don't deserve help. I know I made terrible choices, but I didn't know where else to go." And there it was. The real reason for her Thanksgiving visit. Not reunion, not remorse, desperation. Amanda was broke and homeless, and we were her last resort. "What exactly are you asking for?" I said, because someone needed to cut through the emotional manipulation and get to the point. "I need a place to stay," Amanda said quietly. "Just temporarily, until I can get back on my feet." The request hung in the air like smoke from a kitchen fire. Charlie's jaw tightened. Marcus looked at me with raised eyebrows. And Ramon just watched his mother with the analytical expression he probably used when diagnosing patients. "Let me get this straight," I said slowly. "You want to move back into the house you abandoned? With the family you walked away from? After 9 years of silence? I know how it sounds. Do you?" I leaned forward slightly. "Because from where I'm sitting, it sounds like you only remember we exist when you need something." Amanda's eyes filled with tears, but I'd learned long ago not to trust Amanda's tears. She cried when she wanted sympathy, when she wanted to change the subject, when she wanted people to stop asking difficult questions. "I made mistakes," she said. "I know that, but I'm still family." "No," Ramon said quietly, and everyone turned to look at him. "You're not." The words were said without anger, without heat, just simple fact. Amanda's face went white. "Ramon, I'm your mother." "Biologically," Ramon agreed. "But Sabrina is my family. Charlie is my family. Marcus is my family. You're someone I used to live with who happened to give birth to me." I felt something fierce and proud swell in my chest. This young man, who could have been broken by abandonment, who could have spent his life chasing approval from someone incapable of giving it, had instead learned to recognize love where it actually existed. "That's not fair," Amanda protested. "I was young, I was confused." "You were 28 when you left," Ramon corrected. "The same age I am now. Old enough to know that children need their parents to show up. I was in an impossible situation." "You were in a situation you created," Charlie said quietly. "And instead of dealing with the consequences, You ran. Amanda looked around the room desperately, searching for an ally and finding none. So that's it? You're just going to let me be homeless? I'm going to let you be an adult, Ramon said. The same way you let me be an adult when I was 13 years old and sick in the hospital. The cruelty of that statement, the absolute accuracy of it, seemed to hit Amanda like a physical blow. She slumped back against the couch cushions, finally understanding that this wasn't going to be the tearful reunion she'd maybe imagined. The thing about toxic family members is they never know when to quit. They keep pushing, keep manipulating, keep trying to find the magic words that will make you forget years of damage. Amanda was no exception. Please, she said, and now the tears looked real. I know I messed up. I know I was selfish, but I'm trying to change. Change, Ramon repeated, like he was testing the word. When did this desire to change start? Before or after David left you with nothing? Harsh but fair. Harsh. I'd raised him to ask the hard questions, and apparently he'd been paying attention. It's not just about David, Amanda protested. I've been thinking about you for years. About what I gave up. What you gave up? Charlie's voice was dangerously quiet. You didn't give up anything. Amanda, you threw it away. I was overwhelmed. So was Sabrina, Charlie interrupted. She was dealing with a sick child, a cheating husband, and a sister who betrayed her trust. But she didn't run. She stepped up. I'm not Sabrina, Amanda said defensively. No, I agreed. You're not. And that's exactly the problem. Marcus squeezed my hand, a reminder to stay calm. But honestly, I was past the point of diplomatic responses. This woman had walked out on her dying child, broken up my marriage, and disappeared for nearly a decade. Now she was sitting in my living room expecting sympathy because her karma had finally caught up with her. Look, Amanda said, switching tactics. I'm not asking for much, just a couch to sleep on for a few weeks. I'll find a job, get my own place. Like you did last time? I asked. When you spent 3 months shopping while your son was in the hospital? I was dealing with my divorce from Charlie. You were dealing with my husband, I corrected. In my bed, while your child needed you. The room went silent except for the sound of the grandfather clock Marcus had bought us for Christmas 2 years ago. Tick, tick, tick. Marking time that Amanda had wasted and we had used to build something real. I can't change the past, Amanda said finally. But I want to be part of your lives now. Why? Ramon asked, and his voice held genuine curiosity. What do you think being part of our lives would look like? Amanda blinked, clearly not having expected that question. I could help around the house, cook dinner sometimes. We could talk, catch up. About what? Ramon pressed. You don't know anything about my life. You don't know what I studied in school, what I want to specialize in, who my friends are, what I'm afraid of, what makes me happy. You're a stranger who shares my DNA. I could learn. You could have learned, Ramon corrected. For 9 years. You chose not to. I watched Amanda's face cycle through emotions, denial, anger, bargaining, and something that might have been the beginning of actual understanding. But then her expression hardened, and I knew we were about to see the real Amanda, the one who appeared when she didn't get her way. Fine, she said, standing up abruptly. I see how it is. You've all turned him against me. You've poisoned him. Nobody turned me against you, Ramon said calmly. You did that yourself. I'm his mother. Genetically, Charlie agreed. But Sabrina mothered him. There's a difference. You have no right. I have every right, Charlie said, standing up to face her. I held him when he had nightmares about you leaving. I taught him to drive when you weren't there to do it. I walked him through his first heartbreak when you weren't available to listen. I earned my place in his life. And I didn't? No, Ramon said simply. You didn't. The finality in his voice seemed to break something in Amanda. She looked around the room one more time, taking in the family photos, the comfortable furniture, the evidence of lives lived fully in her absence. I need help, she said quietly. I have nowhere else to go. There are shelters, Marcus said gently. Community programs, I can give you some phone numbers. I'm not staying in a shelter, Amanda snapped. I'm not some random homeless person. I have a family. No, I said, standing up beside Charlie and Marcus and Ramon. You had a family. You chose to leave it. Now you have the consequences of that choice. Amanda stared at us, this united front of people who'd learned to love and support each other in her absence, and I saw the exact moment she realized she'd lost. Not just this argument, but the war she'd been fighting her entire adult life. You'll regret this, she said, grabbing her suitcase. All of you. When you need help someday, don't come looking for me. We won't. Ramon said simply. We never have. The front door closing behind Amanda should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt like the end of a very long, very exhausting chapter that I'd been ready to finish for years. Ramon stood by the window, watching her walk down our driveway with her small suitcase, looking like a woman who'd just realized she'd bet everything on the wrong horse. She'll be back, Charlie said quietly. Will she? Marcus asked. Because that felt pretty final. I looked at Ramon, who was still watching his mother disappear down the street. His expression was thoughtful, but not sad. How are you feeling about all this? Relieved, mostly, Ramon said, turning away from the window. I spent years wondering if I'd made the right choice, staying here instead of trying to build a relationship with her. Now I know I did. It's okay to feel conflicted, Marcus said gently. She is your biological mother. Biology doesn't make someone a parent, Ramon replied. Showing up makes someone a parent. Caring about your child's life makes someone a parent. Being present during the hard times makes someone a parent. The kid had grown up to be wise in ways I'd never had to be at his age. Sometimes I was proud of his maturity, and sometimes I was sad that he'd needed to develop it so young. Dinner's probably cold by now, Charlie said, ever practical. Should we see if the turkey survived all the drama? We made our way back to the kitchen, and honestly, it felt like stepping back into our real life after watching a particularly unsatisfying movie. The turkey was fine, the sides were keeping warm in the oven, and the table was still set for the family that actually mattered. So, Marcus said as he carved the turkey, that was your sister. That was Amanda, I corrected. My sister is subjective at this point. She seemed desperate, Marcus observed. She seemed like someone who'd run out of other options, Charlie said. There's a difference. We settled around the table, the four of us who'd built this family through choice and commitment, rather than accident and obligation. It felt right in a way that family dinners with Amanda never had, even before everything fell apart. I have an announcement, Ramon said as we passed the stuffing. I got the residency I wanted. Pediatric surgery at Children's Hospital in Boston. The excitement around the table was immediate and genuine. Charlie beamed with pride. Marcus raised his glass in a toast, and I felt that familiar surge of maternal joy that comes from watching your child achieve their dreams. When do you start? I asked. Next summer. It's a 5-year program, but I'll be able to come home for holidays and long weekends. Home, I repeated, because the word still made my heart skip a little. This place, these people, this was home to him. Not the biological family that had disappointed him, but the chosen family that had supported him. Speaking of home, Charlie said, looking slightly nervous, I have some news too. We all turned to look at him expectantly. I've been offered a position at the hospital in Boston. Administration, not medicine, but it would mean I could be closer to Ramon during his residency. Charlie, Ramon's voice was soft with emotion. You don't have to. I want to, Charlie said firmly. You're going to be working impossible hours, dealing with life and death situations, learning to be a surgeon. If I can be there to make sure you eat occasionally and have someone to talk to when things get tough, that's what I want to do. I felt tears prick my eyes. This man, who'd been left by Amanda just like Ramon had been, had chosen to keep loving her son anyway. Had chosen to be the father Ramon deserved, even when it cost him personally. What about your business here? Marcus asked. Your house? Business can be sold. Houses can be rented. Charlie shrugged. Family is what matters. And there it was. The difference between Amanda and the rest of us. When faced with a choice between personal convenience and family commitment, Amanda chose convenience. Every time. The rest of us chose family. I have news too, Marcus said, looking at me with a smile, though it's not as dramatic as Boston relocations or surgical residencies. What's your news? I asked. The consulting firm offered me the partnership. Full partner, not just junior. It means more travel, but also more money and a lot more flexibility in my schedule. More good news. More evidence that our chosen family was thriving, building futures together instead of running away from responsibility. This calls for champagne, Charlie declared, or at least the good wine. I'll get it, Ramon said, standing up. But first, I want to say something. He looked around the table at the three of us, his real family, the people who'd shaped him into the man he'd become. 3 days later, the knock on our door came just as I was getting ready for work. Through the peephole, I could see Amanda again, but this time she wasn't alone. A man in an expensive suit stood beside her, briefcase in hand, looking like trouble dressed in Italian leather. Sabrina? Amanda said when I opened the door. This is my lawyer, Mr. Davidson. We need to talk. Oh, here we go. I'd been wondering when Amanda would play this card. When charm failed, when guilt didn't work, when emotional manipulation fell flat, Amanda always moved to legal threats. It was her pattern. I just hadn't expected her to find a lawyer willing to take her case so quickly. About what? I asked, not inviting them in. About my son, Amanda said, and I noticed she was back to calling Ramon my son instead of using his name. Classic possessive behavior from someone who'd shown zero possession when it actually mattered. Ramon is 22 years old, I replied calmly. He's an adult. He can make his own decisions about who he wants in his life. Mrs. Peterson, the lawyer interrupted. My client has rights as Ramon's biological mother, rights that may have been violated when custody was transferred without proper legal representation. I almost laughed. Almost. Because this was rich, even for Amanda. She was trying to claim that somehow her willingly signing away custody she'd been eager to get rid of was now a legal problem. Mr. Davidson, is it? I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. Let me save you some time and embarrassment. The custody transfer was handled by family court with full legal representation on both sides. Amanda signed the papers voluntarily after consultation with her own attorney. Everything was documented, recorded, and completely legal. Circumstances may have been misrepresented. The circumstances, I interrupted, were that Amanda abandoned her sick child to have an affair with my husband. Those circumstances were fully disclosed to the court and taken into consideration. The lawyer's confidence wavered slightly. He glanced at Amanda, who was avoiding eye contact with both of us. My client was going through a difficult time. Your client was going through a selfish time, I corrected. And now she's going through a desperate time, neither of which gives her legal standing to disrupt a young man's life. I just want to see my son, Amanda said, and the tears were back. I want a relationship with him. Then call him, I said simply. Ask him to lunch, send him a letter. Make an effort to build a relationship like any other adult would do. But don't threaten legal action because he made it clear he's not interested in your sudden maternal instincts. She has rights, the lawyer began again. She has the right to contact her adult son and ask for a relationship, I agreed. She doesn't have the right to force one, and she certainly doesn't have the right to challenge decade-old custody decisions because her life fell apart. I looked directly at Amanda. You want to know what's really sad about this? You could have just called him. You could have said you were sorry and asked if he wanted to get coffee. Instead, you brought a lawyer to my door trying to use legal intimidation to force your way back into a life you voluntarily left. I was young. You were 28, the same age Ramon is now. Old enough to know better, old enough to do better, and old enough to live with the consequences of your choices. The lawyer was looking increasingly uncomfortable. I suspected Amanda hadn't been entirely honest with him about the circumstances of her custody surrender. Mrs. Peterson, he said carefully, perhaps there's a way to resolve this amicably. There is, I said. Amanda accepts that Ramon is an adult who has made his feelings clear, stops trying to force relationships that don't exist, and finds a therapist to help her deal with the consequences of her own actions. And if she doesn't? The lawyer asked. I smiled pleasantly. Then we'll be happy to provide the court with 9 years of documentation, showing Amanda's complete absence from Ramon's life. Medical records showing who was present during his illnesses, school records showing who attended parent conferences, financial records showing who paid for his education and care. We'll also be happy to provide character witnesses who can testify to Amanda's pattern of abandoning responsibility when it becomes inconvenient. The lawyer's face told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't a case he could win, and he was starting to realize it. Mrs. Peterson makes some valid points, he said to Amanda. Perhaps we should reconsider our approach. No, Amanda said desperately. I want my son back. I want my family back. You can't have them back, I said gently but firmly, because they were never really yours to begin with. Family isn't about ownership, Amanda. It's about love, commitment, and showing up when it matters. I can change. Maybe you can. But change doesn't erase the past, and it doesn't obligate other people to give you what you want just because you finally want it. Amanda looked at me with something that might have been hatred, might have been desperation, might have been the first glimmer of actual understanding. Hard to tell with Amanda, her emotions had always been more about manipulation than genuine feeling. This isn't over, she said. Yes, I replied calmly. It is. It's been over for 9 years. You're just finally catching up. 6 months later, I was standing in the kitchen of our new house in Boston, watching Ramon through the window as he showed Charlie around the small apartment we'd helped him set up near the hospital. They were laughing about something, probably Charlie's attempt to organize Ramon's medical textbooks by color instead of subject. Marcus came up behind me and wrapped his arms around my waist. Penny for your thoughts? Just thinking about family, I said, leaning back against his chest. How it's funny that the people who yell loudest about blood being thicker than water are usually the ones who've never actually bled for anyone. We'd all moved to Boston, eventually. Marcus had transferred his partnership to the firm's Boston office. I'd started a new consulting practice, and Charlie had taken the hospital administration job. Ramon was thriving in his residency, working impossible hours but loving every minute of it. Any word from Amanda? Marcus asked. I shook my head. Nothing since the lawyer incident. Charlie heard through mutual friends that she moved to Arizona, but that's all we know. Think she'll try again? Maybe, I said honestly. But it won't matter. Ramon knows who his family is now. The doorbell rang and I walked to answer it, expecting maybe a neighbor or a delivery. Instead, I found a young woman about Ramon's age, holding a small bouquet of flowers and looking nervous. Hi, she said. I'm Emily. I work with Ramon at the hospital. He mentioned you were having people over for dinner today? Emily. The pediatric surgery resident Ramon had been quietly seeing for the past few months. He'd been careful not to make a big deal about it. Ramon had always been private about his personal life, but I could tell this one was different. Of course, I said, stepping aside to let her in. Ramon's out back with Charlie. He'll be so glad you made it. I watched through the kitchen window as Ramon introduced Emily to Charlie, saw the way his whole face lit up when she laughed at something Charlie said. This was what happiness looked like on my nephew, my son. This easy joy that came from being surrounded by people who knew him and loved him exactly as he was. She seems nice, Marcus observed, following my gaze. She seems real, I corrected. That's what Ramon needs. Someone genuine. Later, as we all sat around the dinner table, Ramon and Emily, Charlie, Marcus, and me, I realized this was what we'd been building toward all along. Not just survival after Amanda's betrayal, not just recovery from David's abandonment, but this warm, chosen family gathered around good food and easy conversation. I have an announcement, Ramon said during dessert, and something in his tone made us all pay attention. Emily and I are moving in together. The happiness around the table was immediate. Charlie clapped Ramon on the shoulder. Marcus raised his wine glass, and I felt that familiar surge of maternal pride. When? I asked. Next month. We found a place closer to the hospital, big enough for both of our crazy schedules. That's wonderful, I said, and meant it. Emily, welcome to the family chaos. Emily smiled, clearly a little overwhelmed but happy. Thank you. Ramon's told me so much about all of you. You're exactly what I expected. Is that good or bad? Charlie asked with a grin. It's perfect, Emily said simply. He talks about you like you're the most important people in the world. We are, I said, looking around the table at these people who'd chosen each other through crisis and commitment. To each other, anyway. After dinner, as we were cleaning up, Ramon pulled me aside. I got a call yesterday, he said quietly. From Amanda. My hands stilled on the dish I was washing. What did she want? To congratulate me on the engagement. I turned to look at him. Engagement? Ramon's face broke into a grin. I was going to tell you after Emily left. I proposed last week. She said yes. The joy that flooded through me was immediate and overwhelming. I hugged him tightly. This young man who'd grown from an abandoned child into someone capable of building his own loving family. How did Amanda know? I asked when I could speak again. Social media, probably. Emily posted a picture of the ring. Ramon's expression grew serious. She said she was happy for me, that she hoped I'd invite her to the wedding. What did you tell her? I told her congratulations were premature by about 9 years, and that my wedding guest list was limited to people who'd actually been present for my life. I smiled despite myself. And what did she say to that? She cried, said she understood, asked if there was any chance we could start over, build a relationship now that I'm getting married and might want my mother there. And? Ramon looked out the window to where Emily was helping Charlie stack chairs, where Marcus was banking the fire pit, where our chosen family was ending another perfect evening together. I told her that I already have a mother, he said simply. I have a father. I have a family. They're the people who showed up when it mattered, who stayed when it was hard, who chose me every day for 9 years. He paused, looking at me directly. I told her that biology doesn't make you family. Love makes you family. And love isn't something you can decide you want after the fact. It's something you do every day, when no one's watching and when it's not convenient. How did she take that? She hung up. Ramon shrugged. Some people never learn that relationships require showing up, not just showing interest when it benefits them. 6 months later, I walked Ramon down the aisle at his wedding. Charlie stood as his best man. Emily's family welcomed us with open arms, understanding immediately that families come in all configurations and that love is what makes them work. Amanda didn't attend. She sent a card. As I watched Ramon and Emily exchange vows, promising to show up for each other through sickness and health, good times and bad, I thought about all the ways families can break and heal and rebuild themselves. About how sometimes the people who leave us end up giving us the greatest gift of all, the freedom to discover who we really are and who we're meant to love. Later at the reception, Amanda appeared at the back of the hall. I noticed her first. She looked older, more worn down than when I'd last seen her. She stood there for a moment, watching Ramon dance with his new wife, watching Charlie give a heartfelt father of the groom speech, watching our chosen family celebrate without her. Then she approached our table during a quiet moment. "Sabrina," she said softly, Could I speak with Ramon for just a moment?" I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw something I'd never seen before. Not manipulation, not desperation, but what might have been genuine remorse. "That's not my decision to make," I said quietly. "But Amanda, if you do this, if you approach him on his wedding day, you better be prepared for whatever answer he gives you." She nodded, understanding the weight of what I was saying. Amanda walked slowly toward where Ramon stood talking with some colleagues from the hospital. I watched as she approached him, saw him notice her, saw his expression shift from surprise to something more guarded. They talked for maybe 2 minutes. Then Amanda did something that shocked everyone who was watching. She dropped to her knees in front of her son. "Please!" Her voice carried across the reception hall as conversations stopped and people turned to stare. "Please forgive me. I know I don't deserve it. I know I abandoned you when you needed me most. But I'm begging you, let me try to be part of your life. I need you." The silence was deafening. Every eye in the room was on Ramon, waiting to see what he would do. Ramon looked down at his mother kneeling at his feet. This woman who'd given birth to him but never truly mothered him. When he spoke, his voice was calm, measured, and clearly audible to everyone watching. "You don't make me lacking anything," he said quietly. "I don't need you in my life, but you are my biological mother. And for that reason alone, I'll give you this. I'll pay for a month at a hotel and give you enough money to get started somewhere else. But I won't support you beyond that, and I won't pretend we have a relationship we've never had." He reached into his jacket and pulled out his checkbook, writing quickly. $10,000? That's more than you ever invested in me, and it's all you'll get. Amanda took the check with shaking hands, tears streaming down her face. "Ramon, please. Use the money to get help," Ramon said firmly. "Find a therapist. Figure out why you run from the people who love you, but leave me in peace. You chose not to be my mother when I needed one. You don't get to choose to be one now when it's convenient for you." After that humiliation, Amanda disappeared again without giving notice. Ramon, Charlie, Marcus, and I continued living our life as family of the heart, showing that family is who we choose to love and has nothing to do with blood ties. If this story resonated with you, make sure to like and subscribe for more stories about finding your real family, even when it's not the one you were born with. Sometimes the best families are the ones you build yourself, one choice at a time. As Ramon kissed his bride and the crowd erupted in applause, I caught Charlie's eye across the aisle. He was crying. This tough, steady man who'd chosen to love an abandoned child was crying with joy. Marcus squeezed my hand. Emily's parents beamed with happiness, and Ramon's face was radiant with the kind of joy that comes from being truly, completely loved. This was family. This was home. This was what happened when people chose love over convenience, commitment over comfort, showing up over running away. And somewhere in Arizona, Amanda was probably still wondering why her son didn't need her anymore, never understanding that he'd stopped needing her the day she stopped showing up for him. But we understood, and that's all that mattered.